Blitz is defined as a sudden, savage attack. It is indeed all this. The effect is sure. The premise is simple. It's a basic, primal confrontation, man to man. No excuses are offered, none accepted.
Welcome to the latest edition of Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com.
It's like a radio station.
Now, here are your hosts, lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers,
pure athlete, yeah.
I transcend race, hombre.
Matt Butler.
I don't talk, man. I back it up.
And we are chock full of that, man.
Damn right.
And Jeff Howe.
It's still real to me, damn it.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
If you're gonna blitz, come strong, but don't come at all.
Coming strong with another edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns 24/7. I am Jeff Howe as we continue our social distancing measures. We are on location, not in the normal studio, but we're still making it work. Let me bring in the rest of the team. He is the master of the soundboard, the drop machine extraordinaire, Matt Butler. Matt, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well, man. Yourself?
I'm good. And he's a Renaissance man, and he's making sure that we're staying clean and sanitary while we're here on location. Lifetime Longhorn 2002 UT All-American 2002 semifinalist for the Jim Thorpe Award. Fourth round draft choice of the New York Giants in 2003. Spent his NFL career with the Giants, Lions, Bears, Bucks, Broncos, and a year with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the CFL when he was done with football. Got himself back to Austin, Texas in the 40 acres where he earned his degree. Whenever that T-ring comes back in, we will make sure he wears it proudly. Nevertheless, he is a card-carrying member of DBU. And when you get that All-American honor recognized by the NCAA, they make sure you get one of those black cards. Number 21 in your program. Number one in your hearts, Mr. Rod Babers.
Thanks for the intro, brother. As always, much appreciated.
Rod, we haven't really talked about this. How you handling quarantine and social distancing?
I'm pretty good, man. I mean, I'm just trying to do my part. People think I'm a little extreme, some of my measures that I'm taking, but, you know, I wipe everything down. If I get sick, I'm going to say this, if I get sick, everybody's getting it. That's what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting it, and ain't nothing you could do about it if I get sick, because I'm probably about as extreme as you can get. Me and my girlfriend have turned our garage into basically a decontamination center where I have to strip. I'm not joking. I have to strip.
Yeah, your outdoor clothes.
No, I'm not joking. Before I come out, everything that had been exposed to the elements, I strip and I basically go shower.
Yeah.
And then I put on different clothes, and boom, that's how we do it. So like I said, if I get sick, then y'all know. Y'all all gonna get it. And you can do about it. Don't even stress about it.
As I said before, Rod doesn't get sick. He's got the immune system of an alligator. So
I don't get sick very often either. That's true.
That'd
If I
be
do
double
get it,
down.
I hope I'm praying I'll survive. But black folks are being taken out at a disproportionate rate. The COVID is also racist. We found that out. It doesn't discriminate. BS. It's discrimination. They don't like old people and black people.
Well, one thing I want to do to shed some good light, we've always been wondering, Matt and I have, man, does somebody have video or photos of Rod B when he signed his letter of intent with the University of Texas on Rod signing it? Because as Rod's talked about, he wore the rich white man hat when he signed. That's your description. That's not mine or Matt's. That's your description of the hat you wore.
Got it from Academy, I believe. Rich white man hat. It was legit, man. It was stylish back then.
Well, I still don't know if a photo exists, but thank you very much, Aunt Geronimo at CBS Austin, the great Aunt Geronimo.
He's the man.
For posting this on his Twitter account. I'm going to play this, Rod. This is an interview you did in February of 1999.
I remember this, too.
With Jeff Power at KI, what's now CBS Austin, from when you signed your letter of intent. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
I think I've seen this on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You look kind of styling today, Roger. Why'd you choose the University of Texas? Because I feel more comfortable there, you know. It's a real good atmosphere, you know, and I like the way coaches do things at Texas. You know, they say if you do things, do it all the way. Like the hat. Give me one of those hats, all right?
They're just the best school for me, and I felt
there you go. A young Rod Babers.
Oh, man. Dude, that's crazy.
You were still Roderick Babers at that point.
Dude, that is wild. Even hear myself talking back then about Texas. Yeah. I think when I was referring to Texas doing it big, you know, think about what Mac Brown was selling back then. He was going to complete the stadium, and we was going to come in with the number one recruiting class, and, you know, everything was going to be bigger and better. We're going to win a national title. So, in my eyes, like, Texas was doing it about as big as any university could have done that I was considering at the time, which was A&M, Colorado, Penn State, Florida State. my last 5.
You guys were also going to be a Nike school and get rid of those Reebok jerseys with the
Max-
sleeves like
Max said
5
that.
times too big.
Max said that before when he's recruiting everybody. He's like, we're going to be Nike. Don't worry about that. You know
And you can tell just from that package, all the players that had committed their apparel, it wasn't almost uniform with the way within a year or two, the apparel business just with UT exploded and all the kids, and you could see everything. But it was sort of like that last year when in that Reebok year, Mac had the verbal commitment or whatever. And that was still whenever it was the coaches would get like shoe deals and the coaches, whereas like the infancy, the way that you heard like Coach K and Nike or Boeheim and them were able to sort of get the under the table deals, and then they became standardized school deals. And then like you brought it up then that back in those days, pre-Fame or pre-Texas, it was Roderick, and it reminded me of pre-Fame Mike Jordan, that it needed the filter of fame, the filter of being on a national display. Basically, when a whole mass audience gets to consume you without knowing you, how they label you. And just like how you, before your personal life, you were always Roderick, but then it just takes one quick portal to go to UT, and you have this massive entity that then has you just quickly. One person references you as Rod, you're Rod for life.
I think it was Mac, actually. I
and-
think Mac was the one that was calling me Rod.
And that's the same way with Mike Jordan, that he was Mike until he hit that shot, and then he was known forever by everybody across the land. That was Michael Jordan, and it's just sort of crazy how like you can be labeled by the people that don't know you just from one quick shot at fame and one time your life's changed.
You know, if I'm not mistaken, they tried to do that with Roderick Muckleroy. Just go with shorten it to Rod.
Yeah.
And he pushed back. He's like, no, it's Roderick.
Yeah.
And then it was Muck. He actually went by Muck, like he shortened his last name instead.
Yeah, I think I'd rather Rod than Muck.
Or
but
Babe.
I would say that Rod it's more marketable. You know what I mean? For some reason, it rather than Roderick, I don't know. I'm trying to think of famous.
It's like the inverse of
I'm
Mike
trying to
and
think of
Michael.
famous Rodericks out there.
No? Roderick?
There's not a lot of famous Rodericks. They usually turn into a Rod or they're just not. I mean, I'm sure I could if you really do it, but I think in terms of marketing, if you do talk about your, that filter of fame, I think it becomes Rod pretty quickly.
I think you're right.
You know
I can't
what I mean?
think of one. Like there was a kid growing up in my neighborhood that we called Crazy Roderick, but that was it.
See, no famous Rodericks. Got to be a Rod.
Could have got you that. Could have got you that Roddy Piper Hot Rod shirt to wear.
The Rod, see, boom.
Make yourself a little.
Another famous Rod. There you go.
So we're going to talk some NFL draft today, but before we do that, gentlemen, we got news to talk about. A little football news.
Yeah,
other
how about
than
that?
Just a press conference or a chat or anything else with Tom Herman's got going on. We definitely appreciate Tom Herman's time during this downtime. And it's like he said, hey, he's got nothing else to do. He's got just block out some time to answer some questions and whatnot. Tariq Black, the Michigan wide receiver, we've heard about this for a while. He's been the one name in the grad transfer market that Texas has been looking to potentially add. Rod, he announces it Tuesday night. He's coming to Texas. We don't know when he's going to physically be on campus because we don't know when anybody's physically going to be on campus again. But here's my take on what this move means with Tariq Black. I think there's two different layers to it. I think one, for the receiver position itself, you're taking a guy, and here's the key thing to remember. Yes, he's had 2 really bad foot injuries while he's at Michigan, 1 on each foot. So that's key to remember. So he's not the same type. He's the explosiveness, the vertical speed, the stuff he had before to go along with his skill set. When it looked like, he came to Michigan at the same time as Donovan Peoples-Jones, and that first spring he was on campus, there were people talking about him. This guy's got legit NFL potential. Maybe he's not that type of guy anymore. Texas doesn't need him to be that type of guy because if he can just be that prototypical X receiver, which is a skill set Texas doesn't have right now, losing Colin Johnson. Yeah. That big body guy you can put into the boundary. He can go win 50-50 balls. He can use his body to make himself a good target on clutch downs or third downs or fourth downs like Colin Johnson was. If he can just do that, it alleviates pressure on Brendan Eagles to kind of not overextend him and ask him to do things he's not comfortable doing. You can continue to bring Marcus Washington along at a steady pace. You don't have to rush Troy O'Meary. You don't have to basically ask guys to do more, get them out over their skis and overextend them. And 2, and Arad, I think this goes back to the Mike Yursich hire and kind of everything we've talked about with this offense going into 2020. How do you maximize the last year you've got with Sam Ehlinger? This window you've got with Sam Ehlinger, you've got 1 more year. How do you maximize that? I think this is Tom Herman saying, we've got a chance to add a guy that brings a dynamic to the offense we don't have. And if he's healthy, he can bring that dynamic. We'll see how healthy he is. But I think this is just Tom Herman saying, I'm not leaving anything to chance. If I can surround Sam Ehlinger with as many weapons as possible, that's exactly what I'm going to go do.
Okay, the thing that I think is interesting, though, about Tariq Black, and like I said, all of this hinges on him being able to stay healthy.
Yeah.
That's been the thing that's been holding him back, his durability, right? He hadn't been able to stay healthy. Foot injuries, I believe, both of those years, his freshman and his sophomore years. But he's 6'3", close to 220. I think Brennan Eagles is around 6'3", 230 or 225, somewhere around there. So you're talking about a lot of size. I happen to think that Yurcich is going to move around Eagles and move around Black. Even though I know the pro spread, as Tom Herman says, usually that X, which was Colin Johnson, he's always on one side of the field, and you can pretty much kind of predetermine where he's going to be. They didn't move him around a lot. They started moving him around a little bit later on after we yelled and screamed. He must have been listening to the Longhorn Blitz podcast. Started putting him in motion a little bit. He's seen some slot formations. Finally used a bunch versus Utah. God, finally used a bunch. And for some reason, they thought it was like some groundbreaking, progressive way of thinking.
What did they call it?
They're like, they did call it. They called it something special. They did. It
wasn't the Starburst, because that's what OU called it.
They had a special name for it because they said the Utah coverages dictated that they could exploit them by being in a bunch formation. I'm like, you can exploit every coverage by being in bunch formations.
That's like the Peggy Hill special, in my opinion, state insert fact here.
But anyway, I happen to think he'll move these X's around, and I think that's good for Tariq Black and Brennan Eagles, and I think it's going to be better for the offense. You'll get some matchup advantages when you start moving them around, and then you start putting, that H receiver potentially outside, sometimes matched up, on a safety or a linebacker, or they thought a safety who could guard Jordan Whittington or Jake Smith out of the backfield. So I think you'll do some funky things formation-wise. What did yours should say his phrases, players, formations, and plays? Yep. And I think because of that philosophy, these bigger wide receivers, I think they'll be able to take advantage of some matchups that they'll be kind of the blueprint of the offense will get them matched up on. Yeah.
And now there's multiple versions of, say, one to where, like, before, if you had Eagles and didn't have somebody that maybe had the same type of skill set, it would almost pigeonhole him into that role more. But now if you get more like bodies, it just more things for the defense to think about and more possibilities, and then can get depth there, so then you can maybe move around the other pieces if, say, one can be serviceable, just backing up the other.
I think what you're talking about, Rod, I think a lot of that's going to depend on timing and how much time, like when can you physically get him in there and get him in front of Mike Yurcich and Andre Coleman to learn the offense, learn what he's supposed to do. That's why, for me, I'm setting the bar a little bit lower just in terms of, okay, if he can be this guy. Like I said, Brennan Eagles can play the X, I think, especially in this offense when, before Tariq Black, before this all kind of became finalized, we talked about it last week, like how do you replace Colin Johnson? Okay, from a skill set standpoint, you really can't. But how do you manufacture what he brought to the table? Well, you do it by accentuating what these guys do best with Brennan Eagles. Just give him more options on the route tree. Yep. And we saw last year, like, hey, backside drag, he can do that, and he can do different things other than just running verticals. So to me, it's just start small with Tariq Black. Just say, hey, can you be this guy? Can you be the jump ball guy, the 50-50 ball guy, the guy that we can, on 3rd and 6, can we throw you a quick out into the boundary and you'll be there right at the sticks to make a play? That type of guy. And then if he can get a quick feel for that, then I think you kind of expanded and opened up. So I'm not disagreeing at all with what you're saying, Rod. We talked we were blue in the face last year about how you need to do more. You need to be more creative. You need to get guys on the move, highlight your matchups. I'm all for that. Me, in my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, let's kind of baby step this thing a little bit.
Well, especially with this offseason, that's a good point.
Yeah. You got anything else to add on that?
Well, just if he can conceptualize the offense, how fastly he can be integrated into it. That's the type of thing when you have some grad transfer guys that are the veterans, but you're coming from something that's a foreign offense to where you're at now. So you may think it may be time, since he's a grad transfer, that he could come in seamlessly. And those are just the case-by-case basis that are already hard to predict, and then this offseason even tougher to predict. So when you see his skill set, you can sort of can hope to see where he fits in, but it's all about how he can conceptualize into the offense.
I continue to, of all the things Tom Herman's done, guys, I mean, this is the one that maybe I give him the most credit for, is continually not being satisfied with where the roster is, and you're constantly on the hunt to, can you add a JUCO guy? Can you add a grad transfer? You got a hole here. How do you maximize this roster that you've gotten this season? And look, that's something that I hammered Mac for a long time because I never understood. Namely, with Mac, it was the reluctance to pursue JUCO guys.
Yep.
And, it was like once, Donald Hawkins kind of worked out, I was like, oh, yeah, JUCO guys aren't that bad. It's like, well, we've been telling you for 10 years now, JUCO guys aren't that bad.
Didn't he have a couple early on? Was Raphael Randall wasn't a JUCO guy? Was he a JUCO guy?
Technically, he was a JUCO guy, but Big Cat was a little bit different because they recruited him out of high school. And,
I know. So yeah,
Brian Bradford was a JUCO guy, wasn't he?
I think he had a couple early on. That's what I'm saying. I think
it was basically from 2000 to 2010. He didn't deal with them.
But back then, I will say there was a stigma about JUCO guys for whatever reason. I mean, that's why K-State was like the island of misfit toys, right? Because they had so many JUCOs. There was a stigma about it, about JUCOs and about transfers and all that kind of stuff too. I think these days, coaches are willing to roll the dice more on JUCOs because they understand there are a myriad of different reasons as to why guys end up at a JUCO. Yeah, not always. He was troubled, and he's a knucklehead.
Matt had basically got the program to where he felt as if almost like he had gotten above that level and didn't need that, and it took a year like 2010 to level back down and realize, no, we need to fill gaps and fill holes, because it was from Raphael Randall until about 2011 that Texas even looked into JUCO guys, and it took that 2010 season happening for him to sort of recalibrate how he had viewed it and realized, well, if I'm getting beat by all these JUCO guys on these other teams while my guys that I have offered early, kept, and brought in, he was like, no, there's a balance here that we need to be able to marry between the two.
I think some of that came from Stacey Searles too, because Stacey Searles came from
new
kind
staff.
of that Nick Saban, Will Muschamp school
SEC.
of, hey, you want me to get this offensive line fixed? I can't just fix it with high school guys. I got to get some guys in there
grown men up
that
in
can
there.
play.
Yeah, who've been proven already. I'll say this too. You brought up Tom Herman and how there's certain aspects of his philosophy about roster management, which you really you believe that they're favorable not only to help the roster and to build the roster, but also I think they're the continuity. They help with the continuity of the overall team. Think about it. You just brought up, the JUCO thing and him kind of strategically picking out JUCOs. We brought up the fact that, when they recruit guys, it seems like they have a contingency plan for them. Like, if Rojo can't play quarterback, we can play running back. Or, this guy, if he can't play this, he can play linebacker. He said they always have a contingency plan or a backup plan for a play. Even DeMarvion overshowed, which also helps with, overall roster management. You guys, we talk about the bust rate a lot, right? That helps decrease the bust rate. And so I think there are some little things that he does that and when he came in initially, when we had all the, the offensive identity crisis for Texas, you had how the positions that were bereft of talent, right? Quarterback, running back, tight end, offensive line.
Just pretty much the entire offense.
Yeah, you could say the whole offensive line, but we were in the midst of an offensive identity crisis, and yet he came in, and I'd say probably within 2 years, most of those position rooms were filled with what you would call talented depth, but it was unproven. There was a lot of talented guys there, so he's really good at that. I would say as a coach, one of the things that I would compliment him on is his roster management philosophies.
Yes. Yeah.
And the development, that's a different discussion than roster management. But his roster management has been pretty damn good. His philosophy on quarterbacks, recruiting 2 every other year. Yep. You know what I mean? Like it all makes sense to me. Tight ends, because his pro spread philosophy, that's kind of the connection between the pro ideology and the spread philosophy. A lot of the things in terms of his roster management, I really, really do like.
Yeah, because if you like development, you can still manufacture something out of that player because of his versatility and find out another way to where it doesn't go from being, okay, well, this one guy, say that this one quarterback or this one corner, if he cannot be that position, now it's a bust. That's a real quick way to failure. There's only one way to failure. And if it fails, you can really stack those up quickly, and now your 85-man roster really can be deteriorated if you don't do that, if you have guys that can then switch over and you get something out of it. It's what we've been talking about the last few weeks, but we see it across the board and at multiple positions. It isn't just a guy changing down the D-line, it's switching to the other side of the ball or something along those lines, which was something that maybe was more foreign to previous staffs.
Yeah. No, he builds in fail-safes within his blueprint, which I like.
The development,
Football
as you
players.
said, Rod, that's a different story. I mean,
That is a different story.
And that's to be determined. I mean, the book is still, jury's still very much out on whether this program can wholesale develop guys and get them ready for the next level. And I think what the NFL draft showed, it showed a lot of numbers, but I think one number it showed, hey, if you're winning a lot of college football games, you're probably going to end up producing a lot of really high draft picks. So the correlation is obviously there. And I don't want to get too far into the draft discussion right now, but getting back to Tariq Black, again, Texas, I think now has you're developing a really good reputation for grad transfer players. You got, with the exception of Trent Domain, who, was, I think we could all agree, kicking in 2016 left a lot to be desired. Kendall Moore kind of was what he was, but he at least got you through a year where you ran out of bodies at tight end. Had it not been for him, to say you were in a world of hurt would have been a gross understatement. Trey Watson was great the 1 year he was here. Calvin Anderson was great the 1 year he was here. I think, people can debate how good Parker Braun was here, but you got 13 starts out of him at left guard.
You got starting reps out of him.
Was second team All Big 12 guy. So I do think I think Tom Herman has a really good feel for how to handle the grad transfer market. And I think what really helped you with Tariq Black was there was a relationship there with his high school coach and Chris Ash. Because Chris Ash had recruited Tariq Black from Connecticut. Chris Ash recruited that school when he was at Rutgers. So, there's a lot of different things that came together. But for me, outside of the Sam Ehlinger stuff and helping the receiver position, I just think the fact that Tom Herman just again continues to not leave any stone, even at a time where you can't bring a guy on campus for a visit, you can't go see him. Even now, you're still comfortable adding this piece. Which, Rod, that's the other thing I want to get into. And one of the things that's going to come up from this that people are going to ask, okay, other than the injuries and how healthy is Tariq Black, why did he leave Michigan? How did it end at Michigan? And I think you're going to hear some different things. And in checking, with some sources close to that Michigan program, it sounds like probably towards the end of his time at Michigan, I think both parties at that point were kind of like, okay, I think everybody needs a fresh start here. So, but to me, that doesn't really matter. I think you see a guy now, and Rod, you can attest to this. I think early in your college career, probably all you're thinking about is how quick can I get out of here and get to the league? And probably by the end, when you've been through the injuries and things Tariq Black's been through, probably by the time you get to Texas, you're thinking, all right, how do I just make the most of this situation I'm in right now and this opportunity I've got?
Yeah, I think everybody wants to make it to the NFL when they first get to college, but most of the guys, by the time they're seniors, they just want to play, they just want to win. You know what I mean? And I think he's at that point now where he's been through some hardships. He understands that this thing could be coming to an end for him. His football career could be coming to an end. He would like to play, I'm sure, at a professional level, but he knows now he's got to maximize every bit of this experience, and he's got to get the most out of it as a player. He's got to be the best version of himself here. What has he got? 2 years to play one or one?
He's a 2 to play one.
He has 2 years to play one. So whatever that situation, so I guess he could redshirt technically.
Technically, yeah. I mean, if there's not enough time
but he
to
won't.
get acclimated,
But he won't.
But if something were to come up, you get buried.
Yeah.
But
you know what? I will say this: if it's off season, because Tom Herman's a very player-friendly guy. We know that. Tom Herman has, praised players that have transferred within the same damn conference and been like, "Hey, man, it's all good." Like, he's done that a couple of times actually, not a couple of times, but he did it once with
John Bonney.
John Bonney, thank you very much, from Houston Lamar. I should remember that name. But he's a very player-friendly guy, and I wonder if Tariq Black can go to Tom Herman and go, "This is a crazy offseason. I want to play here, but I don't want to waste my experience. I want to be the best version of myself. I would love to have an entire offseason to learn the system, to also, get back in the weight room, all that. And I wonder if he'll say, man, redshirt me. and let me play in 2021.
Well, and not knowing how
I
this
mean,
year's
just
going to
because
go.
you don't know how this year's going to go. Yeah,
Just
you may
having
not
that
even
as
have
a
a season.
possibility.
Yeah.
And that as
So
a possibility.
If he's like, nah, I'm going to redshirt, man. Anyway, just random conversation.
but here's where that might make some sense. And again, you could get to, if guys aren't allowed back on campus in August, maybe Tariq Black's like, look, I really like Texas, but I want to be able to give you guys everything I've got. We don't know. We're just kind of spitballing here because that's all we can do right now. I didn't know about this rule change until Mike Roach, our outstanding recruiting editor at Horns 24/7, made me aware of it. There's been a change. There's been a change in the grad transfer guidelines, if you will, that guys who transfer. It used to be just you're transferring to a school that offers they have a graduate program that's not offered at your current school.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was part of the
That's how it used to be.
That was part
You
of the
just
previous
had to
grad
find
transfer.
Something you were going to go into that wasn't offered there.
The deal now apparently is if you grad transfer, you can continue undergraduate studies at your new school. So if Tariq Black's interested, and maybe he has a certain number of credits at Michigan, and he's interested in, hey,
I got you.
I'm X number.
A dual degree.
Yeah. So,
whatever it is.
I want to go major in the communications here. I can
whatever the case is. So that could be a situation, Rod, where what you're talking about, maybe that appeals to him. I don't know. But like I said, when you get a grad transfer guy, and we heard the redshirt stuff about Parker Braun, and I think all of us sat here and talked about it last spring. Like, no, if you're getting a grad transfer offensive lineman, you're getting him to play right now.
Well, and if he had been a starter type guy, not like, say, multiple injuries, the way Black's situation's much different than that.
So as of right now, we all thumbs up on this move?
It's a great move.
Great upside that comes with it, too.
Yeah.
And, like, when you think about him and his situation, like, you have the top-end talent, but then you have injuries, and then we can just, if you've watched Michigan football at all over the last 4 years, not the best passing game. So for a senior or a guy nearing the end of his career, not a good spot if, say, you already had maybe issues or playing time or injuries keeping you off the field, and then you aren't going to be in a place that if you are healthy, you're going to be showcased or that advantageous. Being able to transfer to a conference where it showcases the ability to throw the ball and his skills, if he's good enough, he may actually have more of an inflated production or just have more eyeballs on his production because you actually come to the Big 12 to look for receivers and things along those lines. So his fit here really does work out well, and then you add on the idea that, well, you had a guy like, say, Parker Braun that transferred in, and he was the immediate success and did it because it filled a gap and filled a hole at a position of need. This is more of one where you're coming in for that top-end upside, but it's still somebody that Texas has a void that needs to be filled. So it sort of can marry the two, even though he hasn't had the on-field success. Worst-case scenario, it's a guy that only takes up scholarship for one calendar year, maybe possibly two, but it's only one, so it doesn't even hamper, say, your future classes or future numbers or anything along those lines. It can only possibly help you in a burst.
It does. It will. It could potentially hurt you because he will count against your initial counters that you can take this year. So from that standpoint,
but that's if he's productive and earning the time.
Well, but when you talk about early enrollees and stuff like that, so it is a number regardless of how you slice it. Like it is a number, so you hope to get something out of it. But Rod, to me, this is less Parker Braun, Calvin Anderson, and more Trey Watson. Like, okay, I'm not recruiting you. I'm not asking you to come in and be the guy you were 3 years ago. Trey Watson had the ACL. I'm not asking you to be that guy. We just need you to be this guy. And really, all you really need Tariq Black to do is really bridge the gap until you get to 2021 where, okay, now you've got Marcus Washington with more experience under his belt. You've got Brendan Eagles.
Veteran.
Yeah, so, that's –
and then by then, your Jordan Whittington, Jake Smith experiments in the H. You should have more clarity there as well.
Right.
And how that's going to work out.
And I know Brendan Eagles is draft eligible this year, and I've seen him on some draft watch lists already. Like, can we just stop putting the cart before the horse on some of these guys? Like, we've seen 1 year out of Brendan Eagles.
But those are just prospects and body
granted, he did some really good things, but let's not get carried away with thinking. I mean, if he is great, if it ends up being that Brendan Eagles leaves and he's a second round, third round pick, whatever, then good for him.
Let's see if he can run a 6 route first.
Yeah.
Right now, all he runs is like 3 different routes. Let's see if he can expand his route tree a little bit, and then we'll start talking about his draft stock.
To me, there are 2 guys at Texas who are underclassmen who I think you can legitimately have the NFL conversation about, and that's Sam Cosmi and Joseph Osai. And I
have it about Caden Stearns.
Yeah, Stearns for sure.
I think Stearns is another guy you have it about.
I throw Jalen Green in there maybe on the fringe. Just because of his body type, skill set, and how Jalen Green looks like an NFL corner.
Well, and that's where I would throw Stearns for sure, but even a BJ Foster, if he's healthy, because we haven't even seen a fully healthy version, and just with his body type, the way it aligns, the same way the people talking about Eagles aren't Texas fans. Those are going to be draft people that are just looking across the scope and looking at this guy's this size, this speed, he's a power 5 guy. We're going to need 20 wide receivers that are going to get drafted out of 7 rounds. Who can even be the possibilities of those, to where if you're looking at the micro, the only one realistic to think would be like a Cosmi or a Stearns. But if you're looking on the macro overall, where which body types, which guys were highly recruited, which ones may work out there, then you can add in those fringe guys around them.
So let's go ahead and talk about the draft. Just from the standpoint of, and Rod, you and Matt, I know you follow the league more than I do. Rod, you follow it more than even Matt does. If I had to rank the fits in terms of where the 3 draft picks went, it fits like a glove with Devin Duvernay in Baltimore. Which
oh my God.
Do the Ravens ever have a bad draft?
It's been a long time. I don't know if it's been a long time.
Even going from Ozzie Newsome to Eric DeCosta, you look at their draft, you're like, wow, the Ravens got better. And we've said that like for
John Harvin.
It all fits. Yeah, I agree with that.
So I love the fit with Devin Duvernay in Baltimore. I think Brandon Jones, depending on what the Dolphins ask him to do, could end up being a really good pick. There were some people, Rod, that didn't like that pick. But, again, I think it goes to what are they going to ask him to do. If they're going to ask him to be a nickel guy, a coverage guy, I think we agree. And it seems like that's an organization that by drafting Tua and with a head coach who's still in his infancy as a head coach, and Brian Flores, it seems like that organization is like, okay, we're going to build this thing through the draft and we'll give it some time where we can grow a little bit.
I like that Brandon Jones fit. I think it's a really good fit. Brian Flores is going to use Brandon Jones the right way. The Belichick disciples, Saban, Patricia, I mean, you name them, mostly they want to play man-to-man coverage, even Romeo Crennel. They believe the ideal coverage there, the dogma of Belichick is that the ideal coverage is man-free. It's the perfect coverage. The only problem with that is not everybody has the horses or the personnel that can play man-free. If you got the horses to do it, then do it. That's why Patricia usually, he errs on the side of coverage, which I don't know why he traded away Quandre Diggs. That's still ridiculous. But Belichick, too. Belichick's a coverage guy. And look at the Dolphins in the draft. They drafted another corner in the first round, Noah Igbenogany. Is it Igbenogany?
I can't pronounce.
I don't know. Whatever.
He reminds me of Ibogaine Effect.
Yeah, so I think it's Noah Igbenogany, but I could be wrong.
Corner from Auburn.
The corner from Auburn. He's a really good player, but they have the 2 highest paid corners in the league, arguably in Xavier and Howard and Byron Jones.
Yeah.
So they're still going to have 3 cover guys, 3 lockdown corners essentially on that team, and they want a safety also that can cover. Brandon Jones, even though I wouldn't want him on the back end playing zone or as my deep field, middle field safety, one thing he's really good at is coverage. You could argue he's the best coverage defender for Texas last year. Even in that LSU game, LSU is picking on everybody in that damn secondary, going after everybody. They go after Brandon Jones, and actually Brandon Jones had more success versus LSU than any other DB. Actually, you could argue that he won more than he lost when they targeted Brandon Jones in that game versus LSU. So I think they watched the film, and Brian Flores, who wants to play a lot of man-to-man, he's like, I can trust Brandon Jones to cover a tight end, to cover a running back, to cover that 3rd, 4th wide receiver. I can trust him to do that. He's shown that ability. And in that system, if that's the way they use him, man, he could end up being a star.
Yeah, because
he could end up starting pretty early, too. They got Adrian Colbert's their starting safety.
Yeah, that's funny.
Nothing against Adrian Colbert. He's a good player, but he's bounced around from team to team. Originally drafted by the 49ers, bounced around. He's a good player now, and he's proven to be a really good professional, and he's going to start for them, projected to be the starter. But I wouldn't be shocked if Brandon Jones is cracking that starting lineup by his season's end.
He could even be starting early on just because they've put people into the fire early on. And, I was just happy with that landing spot. At the time, I was a little worried, but when I saw the way the draft played out for the Dolphins, they're actually all in on this being their core of their future. He was the 6th pick of 65. They had, of the top 65 picks, they kept all 6 of their front ones, and he was the 6th guy of that 65 tour. If you think about that, you have an NFL draft, and you get 6 of the top 65 players. That's impressive, and very rarely do you actually keep all those picks when you have them, and that was the worry, was because you had seen the accumulation of picks with Miami, and back last year whenever they traded away Minkah Fitzpatrick in week 2, everybody was sort of curious as to where the future was. This continuing sort of like the Sixers continued to just get as many picks possible, but never had the full vision in we're going to implement it until they landed the Simmons and Embiid, and you're like, okay, this is the core they like, this is the core, and like this draft going into it, you didn't know, is this going to be the draft that the Dolphins actually deployed, or are they going to continue to move these picks if they don't pick and move back? And then the way it played out with them getting 2 at 5 and then to be able to get their corner in the first, it became pretty evident, especially once they took Brandon. They didn't trade any of those top 6 of the 65 picks, that they really liked him, and this was going to be one of their main core pieces. And when you can look at the roster, just within 2 days, they were able to turn over 12 players and be able to insert them there. And he seemed to be a piece that fit their most prized piece they traded out last year whenever they sent Fitzpatrick out. So his fit was about as good as the Duvernay one that you brought up initially, because there was no coach more jacked up for a pick than John Harbaugh whenever they landed the Duvernay pick. And he spoke about how that sort of was the rhythm of those 3 picks that he wanted to get in those order, and Duvernay was the key one for them too.
Don't forget that Brandon Jones also, he's probably going to start off playing special teams. Brian Flores has started out his career as a special teams coach. We know the Patriots are obsessed with special teams. That's probably another reason he fell in love with Brandon Jones too, because Brandon Jones can play almost every damn special teams unit that you put out there. Also, we know Belichickian disciples, they value high IQ football players. That Brandon Jones notebook experiment where he presented a game plan and presented his own kind of evaluation of their defense with him as a member of that defense and how that played out. I can tell you right now, every Belichickian coach probably almost, got a little turned on. What I mean? They were a little aroused by that because they want a player who can grasp mentally, the game and actually be a kind of a coach on the field. Brandon Jones is that kind of guy.
Rod, it seems like everybody in that AFC East is kind of like, all right, load up right now, get your core in order, because this thing's potentially for the first time in 2 decades is about to be open again.
Yeah, I mean, you can sense it. There's no question about it. There's uncertainty for the first time about the New England Patriots in that division. So I think the Dolphins are coming for it. The Buffalo Bills are already in a position. They showed that last year, but the Dolphins are going all in, and they were supposed to tank last year. And they ended up beating the Patriots, costing the Patriots a bye, and which probably hurt the Patriots' ability to try to advance in the playoffs. Well, no doubt it hurt them. We just don't know how much. So, I mean, Brian Flores is the real deal, man. But he's Belichickian. He's coached special teams. He's coached defense. He's one of those guys. And, I always think those guys have a great mind to build a team from the ground up.
They were going to tank for Tua and ended up getting Tua anyway.
The
one fit, Rod, that I don't like, and it has nothing to do with the player, it just has to do with the organization. Colin Johnson going to Jacksonville, just that seems like Doug Marrone is dead man walking. And I honestly thought, wasn't he supposed to be fired last year and then wasn't?
Yeah, and they've been now it's been a fire sale over there.
Well, it's because of the Coughlin crap that happened. Because you had the NFLPA going out and advising players do not sign with Jacksonville because this guy is circumventing your basic medical rules and fining people. Coughlin had to get ran out of that town because he was doing stuff that was illegal, and the Owen Players Association was telling him not to. So that's what sort of kept Marrone's job, because Marrone was on the hot seat, and then the guy that's going to fire him's fired, and they don't have anybody running the organization but the owner's son at that point.
It's kind of like, Rod, how I view the Jaguars, and again, this is no knock at all on Colin Johnson. I think everybody's happy for him that he was drafted, but it's kind of like the same opinion I used to have of the Bengals or the Raiders at a time. That just seems kind of like where guys go to die.
It's unfortunate. I'm with you because we talked about this. It's a good situation and a bad situation. You look at the wide receiver. First of all, they like big wide receivers.
Yeah, they do.
They do, and he's He's probably the biggest. All right, they got DJ Shark, who's there, 6'4", 198. Chris Conley, 6'3", 205.
Sharon Peake's on that roster, isn't he?
Who is?
Sharon Peake is on that roster, isn't he? He's like 6'5".
I'm not sure. D.D. Westbrook is like 6 foot. He's not that big. But they drafted Laviska Shenault, who's a bigger wide receiver too. So that's kind of what they like. So I think he does fit the mold of whoever has the vision there, whatever they like at wide receiver. But they have Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback now. All right. I think Colin Johnson, if he gets opportunities as was a 5th-round pick, I think he will impress the coaches. Mm-hmm. The only thing that made his draft stock drop, we all know, is because he got hurt, which that just hurt his ability to play on the field. And when he's not on the field, then he can't make those Cirque du Soleil catches that are highlight catches that are all throughout his film. If you watch his film, all he does is make ridiculous catches that show his catch radius, that he can high point the football, and he doesn't need separation to do that. You learn that when you watch Colin Johnson. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't watch Colin Johnson enough, all you think about is, well, he probably runs like a 4.6, and I don't think he creates enough separation. But when you watch him, you realize, oh, he doesn't. That's not his X-Man ability. Mm-hmm. That's not where he sets himself apart. He sets himself apart when he's even with a guy. When that ball becomes a 50-50 ball, he makes it an 80-20 ball. Yeah. He gets enough reps in practice. He will show that. But I don't know if he'll get enough reps in practice to be able to show that. That's my concern about Colin Johnson. They drafted him, but I don't know. Like when Devin Duvernay got drafted by the Ravens, they have a plan for Devin Duvernay. I know exactly what they're going to do with Devin Duvernay. I know exactly what they're going to do. It's so simple. They're going to turn Devin Duvernay into what Deebo Samuel is for the San Francisco 49ers. That's a cheat code they don't have in their offense that they want in their offense. They want a wide receiver with running back tendencies. They're going to line them up in the flex, line them up tight there sometimes in the slot, and they're going to use them as part of the backfield motion, the reverses, and then they're going to put them on the jet sweeps, and they're going to run the pre-snap motion with Devin Duvernay coming here, and then that's how they're going to try to basically use the momentum of the defenses against them. Mm-hmm. They got even the J.K. Dobbins thing makes sense because he's going to be the guy that helps him run in between the tackles. He had more rushing yards than any other running back from the shotgun this year, more rushing yards than any other running back coming out of college football from RPO rushes this year. Who runs more RPOs than any other team? Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah. So they're going to pound the rock inside with Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins. They're going to stress the seams with Devin Duvernay and Mark Andrews, all right? So they're going to stress the seams. Now, if you want to double down and put 8 in the box to try to stop them from pounding the rock inside, go ahead, but just know that Lamar Jackson will exploit and expose your edges. So you better make sure you keep contained. They got Justice Hill to help them do that too, as a running back that can hit the edge. And then as Hollywood Brown is going to raise the roof on every play to keep that safety back. They have so many different problems they're going to present to a defense. It's impossible to solve all of them on any given play. And Lamar Jackson just got to figure out, okay, what are y'all trying to stop on this play? You gonna stop the inside run game? Okay, just want to know. Yeah. All right? You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be so easy for him. So that's what Baltimore's doing, and you can see it. Like I can visualize it. I can visualize Devin Duvernay either stressing the seams, or right down there with the safety, or that nickel back stretching the field, or stretching them horizontally with him being a part of the backfield action in the running game. He's gonna be their Deebo Samuel. They combine more cheat codes than anybody else. RPOs, pistol formations, they run more shotgun, they run more quarterback runs than anybody else, and all of those different aspects, running backs running out of the shotgun, J.K. Dobbins now with Mark Ingram, all that. With all those cheat codes, they're going to combine one more now, and that is the wing back, which is a new, well, it's kind of new. It's an old throwback philosophy and concept from the old wing T days. A wide receiver who's lined up right there, flex, right there by that tackle off that tight end there, and then he can always be a part of the backfield action. You always got to consider that gives them 8 men in the running game, even when they're out of 11 personnel or something, because that guy becomes a part of the running game. And it's Shano's innovation, but teams are stealing it now from Shano. They want their version, and Devin Duvernay is the best version that I've seen in this draft, even though Shano thinks Brandon Ayuk was the number 1 receiver in the draft.
Yeah, and then, you just brought it up right there, and it was when we were watching the Aggie play game that we did in here back 5 weeks ago or whatever, and you saw what you were just describing with Duvernay right off the tackle was where Greg Davis was lining up Roy Williams. If you look at his end arounds, whenever it was an innovative idea, but it was odd seeing how tightly split in almost as a tight end. He was in those formations, but it's just to be able to quickly get that service into the backfield and around the backside. And that's exactly what Duvernay's skill set, because he can motion out into any type of receiver mismatch or into the backfield if you aren't going to just keep him there if you don't already have it. And like when you couple in a guy like Dobbins, because when you heard first last year, Justice Hill, seeing how Justice Hill was used was great, but seeing like when I first saw J.K. Dobbins get drafted and I immediately thought of Vince in the 2,000-yard season that Chris Johnson had with Vince Young next to him, was because of the fact that you had that dual threat and just the quickness. It's just a step, but Mark Ingram didn't necessarily have that step. Now you needed somebody to pound and to plod, but when you saw Justice Hill back there with Lamar at times last year, they were so explosive. And then now when you add in a guy like J.K. Dobbins that can help with that role, their run game is going to be so explosive, which is just going to help Duvernay and Hollywood Brown. And then when you just think about it, like all of us think back when you think of a Ravens receiver and just body type, he looks like a Steve Smith, but it's a 2.0. It's a modern version that can be flexed into any position and role that isn't relegated just to being an outside wide receiver. And Duvernay couldn't have landed probably at a better spot.
Ron, I love that you, and I appreciate the fact that you throw me into the group of football theorists, because that's kind of how my mind works.
Oh, yeah, man.
And did you, back at any point in football, did you play in a wing T offense?
No, played against a couple in high school, though.
I did play in a wing T offense.
Yeah, man.
So I'm very familiar with it. And you know, there's some teams in high school, Liberty Hill's the prime example around Great Austin, they run slot T. Yeah. And the one thing, the wing T and the slot T, what it's all about, it's all about misdirection. It's all about misdirection.
And that's it.
And my favorite play when we were, my sophomore year of high school, when we were running a legit wing T offense, we modified it a little bit to get more. We weren't running 11 personnel, but to get more, 21 personnel, so we weren't so much like 22 personnel and everything just bunched in. Yeah. So we spread out a little bit, but when we were running a legit wing T offense, my favorite play out of that was a play we call X26 OE, which is basically just like a wing back sweep, which you get motion going this way,
and then
the OGE you pull the off guard and the tight end, and the wing back's coming back. So that it was like it's like butter all the time. Man. And that was the bread and butter was X26 OE.
I still remember. That's pretty good.
Love that play. I think we changed it to 20 when we kind of modernized a little bit. I think we just called it 26 OGE. Maybe I got the other way around, but I loved it. But it's all about misdirection and getting and that guy was a unique skill set. The wing back was a different position than the split end. Our split end was more of, hey, who's just our best receiver? And the wing back was typically, all right, you're not maybe as fast as or maybe have good as hands as our split end, and you're not maybe we can't pound you between the tackles like our running backs, but you're just such a good athlete. We're gonna put you here and get you misdirection, or maybe you get one-on-one with a linebacker or a safety if it works right, and then you're off to the races. So, but to take something like that from an antiquated offense like the wing T, and to see it now in the National Football League in 2020, that guys like Kyle Shanahan and Greg Roman are like, no, I'm going to use this and use it to my advantage. It is beautiful, man. I can't tell you how much I love seeing just football kind of come full circle like that.
No, I remember Eric Weddle said last year when the Ravens played the Rams. I mean, he used to play for the Ravens, but he's playing for the Rams now, and they're starting safety. He said, I kid you not, half of the time I didn't know who had the ball because they have so much misdirection in their offense, but they truly didn't have a guy like Duvernay. They didn't have a guy that was a hybrid who, when you get the ball in his hands, he basically becomes a running back. That is why I think they targeted Duvernay. And some people say they drafted with James Prochet in the later
from
rounds.
SMU.
Prochet's another one of those guys.
They're doubling down. Fast. They're doing what Shanahan did when Shanahan drafted Deebo Samuel. Remember the next year he drafted Jalen Hurd, who played running back at Tennessee and then played wide receiver at Baylor. So he's like, no. In case Deebo gets hurt, I'm not going to change my entire offense. I've got 2 wing backs ready to go. And that's the same thing Baltimore's doing because they are now, I think, going to double down. They're going to add this as a dimension of the offense. I'm telling you, it's going to, and he's still going to have the wide receiver screens because they know that's just an extended handoff. So they're still going to have the quick pop for Lamar Jackson who goes, and he's going to give it to Duvernay, and Duvernay is great with the extended handoff, which is the wide receiver screen. And think about the RPO. They run more RPOs than anybody else. So his pop pass for the RPO, all right, and his read pass is going to be either to Mark Andrews most of the time or Devin Duvernay on one other side, stretching the field. Yeah, isn't that funky? And then, other than that, he's going to be the guy part of the backfield motion. Those are going to be his three, in my opinion, his three responsibilities as their wing back. It's going to be the wide receiver screen, the stretch the seams with the RPO pass, and he's going to be a part of the backfield motion. And he's going to be successful early. He really is.
What round did they take James Prochet? Was
it
that
like fifth round? It's fifth or sixth.
Yeah, it's like fifth or sixth.
I remember that. And him, I just know him.
He's another one of those guys.
So much production he got his last 2 years in college, and now you look at the skill. Like, just look at those skill guys for the Ravens. You got Oklahoma, you got Texas, you got Oklahoma State, and then you got a kid from LaGrange and J.K. Dobbins and Prochet backing them up. Like, it's all it is.
Big 12 football.
Yes, 100%.
Well, Big 12 football, and there's some teams now figuring out, and we knew this would happen, right? You had, for the first time in the history of the Big 12, 2 linebackers taken in the first round. First time in the history
a tech linebacker.
Of the Big 12. We're talking
about a tech linebacker.
Yeah, go tech linebacker, so go all the way. You can go all the way back to, when we actually did play defense, and it was respected in the Big 12 in the late 2000s, and yet still we didn't have 2 linebackers.
I like how you brought that up, though, man.
Yeah. So and think about it, like you said, one was from Oklahoma and one was from Texas Tech, but those guys they're basically big safeties, right? There's bigger safeties, and they can run, and they in this modern age of football, which is basically like you said, Big 12 football, those guys are perfect linebackers. And Patrick Queen with the Ravens. God, the Ravens are unbelievable.
Good.
He's another one of those guys.
And I said it out loud the second that he got drafted, but when I saw it, I was like, finally, look at that. The NFL coming to the Big 12 for defenders, because now you finally, because we were talking about the last 5 years that the skill set is going to translate on offense, and you saw that the NFL comes to the Big 12 to get their offensive players, and the only way to be able to respond to that, it takes time, but then is to come and get the guys best fit to defend them, and that's where we may see that wave come back. And then now, instead of it being viewed as a detriment, these guys that were viewed as diminutive or couldn't do certain things, their niches are going to be so in demand because they are the only ones experienced with defending these type of players.
First time Tech had a linebacker drafted in the first round since Senior Sack in 1983.
Defensive player, period.
Defensive player, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, defensive player.
Yeah, Gabe Rivera in 1983. Yeah.
Senior Sack, I like that name.
It's a great nickname.
Not just the Big 12, but where has a lot of the Big 12 offensive innovation started in the state of Texas. J.K. Dobbins, and not just offensive guys, but J.K. Dobbins, Justin Matabike, Devin Duvernay, Broderick Washington, James Prochet. 5 of the Ravens draft picks all played high school football in Texas.
That's pretty wild. Well, there were 33 players drafted for the state of Texas, so more needed to say.
Oh, you had that stat. That stat was awesome with the cities.
Oh, yeah, there were 13 players drafted from Houston, 12 from DFW, from the greater Houston area, from the DFW area. So 13 to 12, 25. That would be more than any other state had drafted in the NFL draft in 2020, except for the state of Texas, which had 33 total. Yeah. So Houston and DF. So I'm starting to, and honestly, it's been that way for a while. Like, this is not a new thing. Not that they've dominated the NFL draft like this, but that Houston and DFW have been that way forever. We've always had that.
I remember us doing sports radio together, and we found the numbers, and it was only at certain years Miami or Los Angeles were the only metro areas that were comparable to Dallas.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Dallas and Houston.
It's Miami, it's Fort Lauderdale, Los Angeles. I think every now and then New Orleans and Atlanta pop up in there somewhere.
I'll pull up a new study. I'll see per capita.
From year to year, Houston is constantly in the top 5, though, constantly. Yeah. Every now and then I think Dallas will even fade out. Dallas fades out just a bit. Houston, they're faced because Houston, with Hurricane Katrina, when 250,000 people from the state of Louisiana take refuge in Houston, which was already a football mecca, producing NFL players per capita at a top 5 rate for decades, when you have the state of Louisiana, which per capita is always top 5 too, and producing NFL players per capita. Always. And then you basically have merged those 2 football cultures right there in Houston. I know it sounds crazy, and Tom Herman's done a good job of recruiting Houston, but you almost got to double down on it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's crazy to say it. You just need to start doubling down on Houston and Dallas. And I know the rest of Texas, there's a lot of talent out there, but East Texas had 4 players drafted on the way to Louisiana. Yeah. So my point, we got 1 player on our roster from Louisiana at Texas. 1. Dude, Louisiana is producing. If you go look at it, Louisiana had 12 players drafted. East Texas had 4 players drafted. Houston had 13 players drafted. That's just on your way to Louisiana. You can just hit that little corridor, and that's just tons of NFL talent right there. So, honestly, I would challenge Tom Herman. You got to start getting a presence in Louisiana, man. Because Mac had more of a presence in Louisiana, I think, than Tom Herman does.
Because you got to.
When
you talk about recruiting in the state of Louisiana, you got to look at it from 2 different mindsets. There's North Louisiana, kind of Shreveport area, which your East Texas, Tyler, Longview, that's going to bleed into Northern Louisiana. And then you talk about recruiting Metro New Orleans and Baton Rouge, you got to have, if you're going to recruit there, Rod, you've got to have somebody that's got ties to that area, which is why Charlie hiring Brick Haley, Charlie wanted to get a foothold in Louisiana. Hiring Brick Haley was really, really smart. And lo and behold, they got a guy who's got a chance to play in the NFL, and Malcolm Roach out of Baton Rouge.
Undrafted free agent for New Orleans, $95,000 guaranteed in that contract. That's pretty damn good.
When you look at that, though, I didn't realize the Saints only had 5 picks in the draft.
Yeah.
And didn't draft the defensive lineman. Not that they need one, because they invested a first-round pick in Marcus Davenport. They signed Malcolm Brown as a free agent. You still got Cameron Jordan on your roster.
That's true.
So it's not that they needed draft picks, but Malcolm Roach is going to have a chance.
I think he's got a chance. I think he's got a real shot to make that roster. If not, make the roster, then be a practice squad project for somebody, because he's so raw. You talk about someone who's so malleable. When you're a defensive coach, you look at this guy, you say, hello, so you played linebacker and also played DN and D tackle? So you beefed up to almost 300 pounds for the combine and still ran a 4.8? I mean, I just got to figure out so many plays. So I think New Orleans, which, I think they're just a very progressive organization, a smart-minded organization, I should say. I think they'll take a chance on him. Well, they already have. But I think they'll actually try to put him on a practice squad if he can't make that roster. But no, he's got a shot to make the roster, man. He's a good football player. And he's a coach's son. Like, he gets it.
Yeah.
You know he does.
Yeah, and Zach Shackelford in Tampa, he said that, and I looked, the Bucs only out. I don't know the Tampa Bay Bucs offensive line roster, how many of their guards can play center, but they've only got 1 center on their roster.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, so he could be giving snaps to the GOAT? That'd be
Could.
awesome.
Now you know how it is, Rod. If you're the rookie undrafted free agent, you're not giving snaps to Tom Brady in minicamp.
I'm just saying they only got 1 center there. That can happen because that 1 center, sometimes, they're like, no, let me throw you a different situation. Oh, you tied. Or if he's the only center, they're like, we don't want him to get hurt, so put that little rookie in there and let him go take some. I'm telling you, man, you'd be surprised. You'll end up with Tom Brady fondling your nether regions because you end up giving a snap to the GOAT.
No, 100%. I mean, the second I saw that he signed, I immediately thought of Lyle Sinline, and Lyle did the same thing. He just was a guy. He took a spot at a camp from an area that had a good veteran quarterback, and within 2 years, he's starting at center and Super Bowl.
Sinline's a better player than Shackelford.
Yeah. Can I just tell y'all real quick? This is a funny story, and Rod, you just mentioned that, made me think of it. My JV football coach described how because Rod, football coaches when at a time when everybody's under center, football coach talk about you need to get pressure, you need to get some pressure.
So is he like a knuckle?
I remember my JV football coach telling quarterbacks he would come over to the offensive line. He's like, who's my centers? Because JV coaches don't know names. Like, who's my center? Oh, I'm a center.
This is him talking to like a 15-year-old.
And then he's telling quarterbacks, he's like, I don't know what he says. He's like, what you want to do to get pressure? He's like, you see, show me your middle finger. So he's like,
I've heard this.
See your knuckle right there? You want to make sure you get it right there, right near his bunghole, right there, and just give it a little pressure.
I've heard the same thing from a coach, a knuckle on the grundle.
See, that's what I'm saying. That's, that's a great story. You can say Tom Brady, knuckled me in my perineum.
And then think about it. Like, we're talking about, and this is just an everyday conversation in high school football with 15-year-olds.
Yeah. Nobody talks about how centers are actually trained technically, but that is it.
That's what they tell you. Like, you put a little pressure right there. Got to get pressure.
It's very graphic. That's why I love the shotgun. It's like, you know what? Let's just socially distance ourselves and just give me the shotgun.
Oh yeah,
like, coach. Like, anybody else to snap? No, coach. I'm good over here.
If you're Shaq, you be like, Shaq, you want that? You want Tom Brady there? So you be like, can we work some under center with you, Tom? Would you mind for a second?
I'll go work on my kick slide over here.
Isn't even getting into some of the foul stories where, like, you talk about a lineman that just didn't want to have to go to the bathroom, so they just go in their pants, and you're just sitting there dealing with this.
Just told that story.
Yes,
it's disgusting.
And just slapping around.
Yeah. All right, you just ruined it, man. Thanks.
I never.
Nice bit that you just killed.
A guy named Stink.
You know, Rod, you want to watch something freaky on film that I tried to replicate? I tried to replicate in high school one time to a high level of failure. Go watch pass blocking film of Randall McDaniel and watch his stance. Like his left leg is almost at like a 45-degree angle.
Is it where his knee was almost on the ground? I have seen that.
Or like his leg's almost at a 90-degree angle.
It's
like
weird.
how do you like?
How'd you not break your leg?
He's a freaking Hall of Fame guard, so it worked out for him. But
I have seen that before. That is weird. Yeah. Somebody showed me that before.
That must be like he had some type of restrictive bow-leggedness or something where you're almost putting yourself in your next step before you get there.
The fact that he made it all the way to the league like that, and like you said, Hall of Famer, that's crazy.
They aren't going to change the way you're moving.
That's how good he was, though.
Yeah, exactly.
That, unlike Casey Hampton at times when he would shade over the ball, like he was almost lined up like facing the sideline.
Yeah,
at times.
I remember that too.
I never understood that.
Yeah.
But like what is...
I think because I could be off about this, but I believe that allows you to take up two blockers quicker.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Instead of like they could single block you easier if you would just head up. The more head up you are, you got that angle, then you'll easily boom. He's trying to demand a double team. That's the whole point. So he's trying to force the double team.
Because I never really saw anybody but Casey do it, and I figured if it was bad technique, Mike Tollison's probably not going to tell Casey Hampton he's wrong.
And he would face, I believe he would face, and I could be off. It's been a while. I believe he was facing toward a gap that he would defend. So they would give him like more gaps to defend than everybody else. Like, nah, Casey, you can defend 2 gaps, right? Yeah, I can defend 2 gaps. All right, two and a half gaps? Yeah, I can do 2.5 gaps. So he would literally face it, and he would just kind of run down the line as he was being double teamed and led the team in tackles one year and very successfully. So he would just kind of run down the line and boom, he would just he'd cover like 2 or 3 gaps. All by himself. Oh, by the way, Sean Rogers was there too.
It's basically
his gap.
If you touch Casey Hampton, he consumes you. Like that's basically what it was on the O-line. Like,
he was like a superhero.
Yes,
like
exactly.
if you touched him, then somehow
he was going to consume your body and not let you.
Because they always took 2 guys to block him, and one guy couldn't block him. He would go upfield. The best thing they could do is they wanted Casey Hampton going parallel to the line.
Yes.
You want him going horizontal,
disrupting,
and you would keep him, and he would play into that. It's like, all right, they're going to double team me anyway. Instead of me fighting to go upfield all the time and penetrate, and and you're trying to reset the line of scrimmage, you may do that successfully, 2 out of 5 times. But instead of doing that and having those 2 guys block you and just basically nullify your impact, how about I roam the line of scrimmage and I let 2 guys block me, but I'll still be an impact player because once that running back chooses a gap, I am a moving stopgap. I'm a moving defender.
You know what I mean? And then the defender can come in behind him.
Instead of him just in one gap, like just like this, fighting off 2
guys.
In
theory,
he was athletic enough to do it.
And that's resetting the line of scrimmage just a different way instead of vertically, horizontally. And if you're taking 3 bodies, then you can easily see a linebacker has plenty of space to come in. If you have a linebacker that can play well off of Hampton, you just play well and fill that gap behind him.
Linebacker can't play well. Don't let that guy
on the field. Exactly.
There's a couple other things I want to hit in a couple minutes we've got left. And one is, Rod, I don't know if you've seen these articles. I'm sure you have. Our staff at 24/7 Sports has been great at putting them out since the draft. If you are somebody who's in the Stars Don't Matter club, well, this NFL draft.
These people still exist?
This NFL draft kicked you right in the tenders.
They're not the only thing that matters.
Right. But between the 2016 and 2017 recruiting classes, Rod, 62.3% of 5-star prospects were drafted, and this is according to the 24/7 Sports composite over 2 recruiting cycles, 16 and 17. 62.3% of the 5-star prospects were drafted. 23.5% of the 4-star prospects were drafted. 6% of the 3-star prospects, and just 1.6% of 2-star prospects were drafted.
What's the percentage of the 4-star again?
23.5.
23.5.
So basically, as Chris Hummer writes, with that under consideration, the likelihood of being drafted is weighed heavily towards the higher-ranked recruits. In fact, a 5-star was 10.4 times more likely than a 3-star to hear their name called during the 2020 NFL draft.
Is it possible that there's a little truth to the statement, though, that stars don't matter, in the sense that you guys in the recruiting world have just gotten so much better at your jobs. I think the accuracy of the recruiting rankings has improved dramatically from
20 years ago.
Yeah, from the 50. You know what I mean? Back in the day, it was like, oh God, you got no damn to talk about. Now
better's a relative term.
You know what
I think there's more information now.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They're more accurate though.
Yeah,
they're way more accurate than they used to be. No question.
Well, and with the more information,
you're gonna have misses.
And they mattered. I'm gonna say they always matter, but I'm saying they're ridiculously accurate now.
You're gonna have misses, and I have to deal with the stuff on Twitter. Oh, well, Le'Veon Bell was a 2-star, and JJ Watt was a 2-star. Great, you found one guy had a 1,300.
Justin Jefferson was 0 stars.
Good luck trying to get that guy and develop him.
You found the one guy. So, I mean, look, if you're still in the group that think, stars don't matter, I'd rather have a hard-working 3-star. Bullcrap, because I can tell you, Nick Saban doesn't want a group of hard-working 3-stars. He wants the best damn college players he can find every year. And so does Dabo Swinney, and so does Tom Herman, so does Ed Orgeron, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so go on down the list.
So there's that. And then, Rod, we could pick this up next week, too. Linebacker's been a position we've discussed ad nauseum this offseason, and we probably will until we get to game action and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But like we said, there's two Big 12 linebackers. Well, actually, before I get to linebacker, I want to go over and look at some of the Longhorns in the NFL that are currently in the NFL and how it impacts them. I was interested to hear the Chargers say they still have plans for Malik Jefferson, even though they took a linebacker, Kenneth Murray, in the first round. They had high grades on Malik Jefferson coming out, and they're going to give him a chance to make their roster.
Yeah, we talked about the culture of football. It helps Malik Jefferson. I mean, that's Big 12 football they're playing in the NFL. And the Chargers, they love speed, period. Yeah. They'll play 7 damn DBs they got you to put no speed on the field. It helps to have a linebacker that can run.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
The other thing, the Vikings taking Jeff Gladney the first round.
Saw that.
And I was like, maybe that's not good for Chris Boyd and Holton Hill. But then I remember, they let Xavier Rhodes walk. I think they cut Xavier Rhodes, and they let Trey Waynes walk in free agency. Yeah. So it sounds like, right, it sounds like they, number one, it sounds like they like Chris Boyd. And two, man, until Mike Zimmer is ready to give up on Holton Hill, which it doesn't sound like he's ready to yet, those two guys still have a chance to make that roster.
Man, we all know if Holton Hill
they're gonna be
had a better head on his shoulders, he'd have been All-American that year. Because he'd have played the whole year, and he was already off to an All-American start.
He would have been in that draft class that had 4 draft picks: Connor Williams, Malik Jefferson, Deshaun Elliott, Michael Dixon. He'd have been the first off the board.
You know what I mean? We talk about the NFL body that you love about Jalen Green. Holton Hill, he looks like a Seattle Seahawks corner. He looks like Richard Sherman out there sometimes. You know what I mean? So I can see why Zimmer's like, all right, he's got some knucklehead in him, but he's cheap as hell. I didn't have to pay nothing for him.
And now I don't have to worry about
the dollar. And him and Chris Boyd are, I think he's hoping Chris Boyd. There's a story about it actually. They in their local papers. Some Tribune up there or something.
Minneapolis Tribune.
Could be, where they talk about Chris Boyd and Holton Hill and how they kind of believe that Chris Boyd's having this kind of calming effect on Holton Hill that it helps to have, because how close they are. They're brothers, DBU, of course.
Well, and they're both in the 2 deep right now. And if you watched into the season last year, Holton Hill was an impact player.
They both committed to Texas on the same day together.
Yeah, and Holton Hill, of course, even in the NFL, has had to face some demons, and fight some of those demons. But I think his upside is ridiculous, and he's so cheap, man. That's one thing. Having a high upside and being cheap. Ask Alden Smith. All right, he'll get you a lot of chances. Randy Gregory, you got a high upside and you're really cheap. Hey, you know what? NFL will give you a shot.
And maybe they're just hanging out in the off season, but I've seen he's been with Earl Thomas a lot too with Holton. So that may only help. And then the idea that you don't have to worry about weed suspensions going forward. So that's huge.
Agent is? Is his agent David Mulligetta too?
Yes, I believe so.
I don't think so.
I'll double check.
I don't know if it is. It would make sense that it would be because of all the connections, but I don't know if it is. My point is, if it is, that helps too. Because he might be he's one of the top 5 agents in the league. I don't think
David was representing him coming out, but he might now.
I was saying because of the family. The Longhorn connection with David is big, so
you get that Kenny Vaccaro,
Earl Thomas, and H-Town with the Deshaun Watson thing, and Holton's from H-Town, so he spends a lot of time.
The 2 other guys I wanted to hit on real quick, Rod. Malcolm Brown still chugging along with the Rams, and they drafted a running back in the 2nd round, but Sean McVay is still adamant, like he really likes Malcolm Brown, and they're going to keep giving Malcolm Brown carries. Yeah, it's weird, Malcolm Brown has had this weird career with undrafted free agent, special teams guy now.
5 stars, though.
But people are like, and every time Sean McVay gets asked about running back, you ready to upgrade? He's like, no, we like Malcolm Brown. Malcolm
But he is a great complement of a lot of different, tools, great running back tools. You know what I mean? He's got a great base and got great balance. He's not speedy, but he's not a slow running back. He still can run off tackle if you need him to. He's got a perfect complement of speed and power. We've already loved Malcolm Brown. That's why y'all gave him 5 stars, for God's sakes. So I'm not shocked about that. Darrell Henderson's still there with the Rams, too. And they drafted a running back with Cam Akers. Yep. So, yeah, he's going to be a part of it, man. Like I said, it's crazy that he's outlasted Todd Gurley there.
We'll carry the linebacker stuff to next week because I want to get more into that. But the last guy I want to mention real quick, Rod, however you slice it, this is a huge offseason in Dallas for Connor Williams now because you drafted Connor McGovern last year, and he's going to be healthy, and it sounds like they've got big plans for him. And Tyler Beatis just kind of fell in their lap, and we're like, hey, we got to go up and get this guy. He's still here. There's no way we thought he was going to be here.
Yep.
So with Travis Frederick retiring, you've got Joe Looney probably just for one more year. There's been talk maybe Connor Williams cross-train at center a little bit. Maybe he ends up being their swing guy. But, man, for a guy that started day one as a rookie, this just became a massive offseason for Connor Williams as far as his future in Dallas goes.
Yep, I'm with you. And I have heard that they are thinking about cross-training him at center, too. Wouldn't be a bad idea. He should be very open to it because the more things you can do, the better. I mean, the more rosters you'll make in the NFL. But the Cowboys, they love O-line, and even when they have depth at O-line, they double down on it. And now it's paying off for them. The Travis Frederick retirement, so at least they have options with Connor McGovern and now with Connor Williams too. But Tyler Beatis, hell, I wouldn't doubt if he's end up starting for them by the end of the season.
I mean this was a guy, Rod, that was on the board in day 2, and we're thinking, okay, he's going to go at some point, probably here in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt if he's the starter there. So, but I'm with you, Connor Williams. Yeah, it's kind of a do-or-die year for him. He's supposed to be cracking that starting lineup somehow, and I know he has, but I don't know if he's disappointed at times, too. He's been inconsistent, but he's still a young player.
It seemed like he was starting to get it a little bit before he got hurt last year.
Yeah, he's still a young player, though.
So, all right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. We'll get to linebackers next, because I think that's a really in-depth conversation that we can get into. Matt, thanks for everything, man.
You're more than welcome.
Rod B, thanks for the time and the knowledge.
Anytime, brother, anytime.
For Matt, for Rod, for everybody at the Austin Radio Network and the Horn, 104.9, 101.9 AM 1260, streaming on the Horn app and hornfm.com, where you can get Rod B each and every weekday on the triple option from 3 to 7.
Shameless plug. You
can also get me and Craig Way on Light the Tower each and every weekday from 10 to noon. And thanks to Matt, you get all of our archives, classic interviews, classic shows on the Longhorn Blitz SoundCloud page.
Yep, just type in Longhorn Blitz.
And search Horns 24/7 podcast, no matter how you get your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. You get us, State of Recruiting, and the flagship. Just search Horns 24/7 podcast. For the Horn family, for the Horns 24/7 family, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for downloading and listening, and we will catch you again on the next episode.
You've been listening to Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com. Remember, for the latest Longhorn news 24/7, visit horns247.com.